Hello and welcome to Neighbors and Friends, a periodical discussion of education in our community. My guest this evening is Phil McCormick, who is a psychology teacher in local high school. We'll tell you more about that later. Welcome, Phil. It's nice to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
You majored in psychology at Montclair State. Why did you choose that major?
Well, originally when I started college, I was undeclared, and I wasn't quite sure freshman year what I wanted to do. So an advisor told me to take my various general education requirements. So that's what I did. And he also said each semester take one class just for the sake of it, just one class because it interests you and you think it would be fun. So I chose psychology as that class, and it was my first semester in college, and I took it, and I just thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was really eye-opening. It was the first time that I had taken a psych class. I hadn't had the opportunity in high school, and I just really enjoyed it. And ironically enough, this professor's daughter actually would become my student here at Columbia High School, totally randomly, but I really enjoyed the class, and then I went back to taking some other classes, and by the end of year 2, I had decided that psych was the thing that I liked most, so went back to it.
In your development as a psychology undergraduate student, did you ever have public school teaching in mind as a goal?
It was my, by the time that I had officially declared psych, that was the end of my sophomore year, beginning of junior year. And at first I didn't think of teaching entirely at first. It had crossed my mind, but not necessarily psychology. I thought, education in general. I didn't know if I'd want to go into, world language, or I just kind of thought of education. And then I kind of went to psychology. And then a bit later, when I was talking with other advisors, they were telling me that with a bachelor's in psychology, it's a limited amount of things that you can do. So they were, advising me to go for my master's. And then it kind of came up that with psych, you could get teacher certified and be certified for social studies as well as psychology. So I said, you know what? I like psychology a lot. I feel that, teaching could be something I might want to do, so might as well get the certification. So that's what I did, and I have social studies cert, which is, your history, economics, sociology, geography, etc. And then I also have the additional psych requirements. So yes and no. I was thinking about teaching, but I wasn't my entire goal at first.
We met several years ago, when just about the time you began your career as a high school teacher here at Columbia. I wonder whether your ideas about what high school teaching might be like were fulfilled or not. How did you feel about that? I know you probably had some student teaching experience before you became a full-time teacher.
Yes. But
your first year at Columbia had to have been puzzling, maybe? How did it work out for you?
My first year was a lot of work, and it was a lot of time management, managing my time and figuring out, being able to, learning to prioritize and prioritize lesson planning, which now I kind of take for granted. Now it's as simple as going to my flash drive and maybe doing a little bit of tweaking, but for the most part, a lot of my files have been built up. But my first year, it was a lot of creating those lesson plans for the first time. Grading was always very time consuming because I didn't at that point really have all the tricks that I've learned and collected over the years of working smarter. So it was very time consuming. The certain aspects of it weren't so difficult. Classroom management wasn't a difficulty because of that previous experience. I substitute taught my last 2 years of college. I did some subbing in various districts, and that was not much teaching involved, but it was really a lot of practice with classroom management, so that was not too much of an issue. And student teaching really kind of broke the ice as like the first teaching experience. So teaching itself, I don't think it was necessarily overly difficult. I had great students, I had a great bunch of kids my first year, and subsequent years as well. But they were really understanding of it being my first year. But the hard part was the time management behind the scenes. That was the hard part.
Well, that's because these days, at least, teachers are actually part-time administrators. You have a lot of parent involvement, you have a lot of counseling involvement, you have a lot of special needs children with whom you have to deal. I was lucky, I guess. I was in public school and high school at a time when teachers mostly taught and designed tests and made their own lesson plans and did their own grading, and there were no computers. I suppose there were abacuses, I'm not sure. But what can you tell me about the kinds of students that you've enjoyed the most working with as a psychology teacher and as a social studies teacher?
I would say some characteristics, kids that are in any kind of social studies class, you need to be analytical, and you need to be, curious and ask a lot of questions. So that's always a lot of fun when kids, can apply their analytical skills and really get into the material and really ask a lot of questions. That's always an enjoyable process, in the teaching learning process, is getting kids really curious about different phenomena and theories and things.
You have AP classes now in psychology, which
Yes.
You didn't have to begin with because, I don't know, did Columbia have psychology as a course before you arrived?
Actually, when I arrived, yes, they did have, CHS did have a psych course. It was the general elective was available, which is a 3-4 honors college prep elective for juniors and seniors. And when I was hired to teach history and psych. So the psych program wasn't too big at that point, which was fine for me because I was able to use both certificates. But after my first year was when we started AP Psych. My second year was the beginning of AP Psych, which was definitely a fun experience. It was huge for me at 24 years old, second year teaching. I was able to have this great experience of designing the curriculum. I was sent to Fordham University for an AP workshop, so it was a great experience. It was a lot of work, of course, creating that and things, but it was that was my second year was our first year of AP, and it's just kind of grown since, more students involved with it.
When the students elect to do an AP psychology class, how many of them actually get bit by the bug and go on to major in psychology, or at least to take it a little bit farther after they go to college?
Out of the general elective population, I'm not entirely sure. I think in the elective, typically there are 4 classes per semester, so it's quite a lot of kids that take it. So I'm not sure number-wise with that. I've had quite a few students reach back, via email, telling me that they're taking psych. Out of the AP class, I would say last year, out of about 30, possibly about a third went on to major or minor, as far as I'm concerned, in psych. So a lot of them were really passionate and really were interested in it.
Yeah, in my last few years of substitute teaching, it's always seemed to me that it would be really helpful if some student teachers had more than 1 or 2 level courses in psychology or in child development or some other aspects, so that they'd be better prepared for dealing with kids when they actually get into a classroom. I think the biggest problems I had adjusting to becoming a public school teacher was listening to the kids and not feeling like I had to be the boss and the director, but the guide. And there's a big difference between being a director and a guide. That means listening to the kids and helping them understand better the material that you're responsible for conveying to them. How well did your student teaching assignments prepare you for actually becoming a full-time teacher?
I think student teaching, I feel like really, it really got me started with, framing the material for students, creating unit plans, because in college we learn the material, but then it's a matter of taking that and designing it into 45-minute, or where I was student teaching, it was 80-minute block periods, which was a little bit more difficult because it was more going into it. But I feel like that student teaching really helped me kind of frame the material, not necessarily know it, but frame it and design it in a way that students would best receive it. And then also practicing assessments, the time management thing, of course, was, I was able to start practicing that, and just kind of like the multitude of things that teachers have to do on a regular basis, that you have to multitask so much, keeping students on task, who's here, who has an IEP, who has a 504, taking attendance, like little things that we kind of take for granted. And I think it was an icebreaker to start doing all of that plus teach.
It's one of the things that I found, not having taught in public school when I began substituting here at Columbia, was, to me, being a substitute teacher was a lot like being a grandparent. You have all the fun and none of the responsibility for the dirty work. Mm-hmm. Except that within a short period of time, I decided I was going to teach. I wasn't going to babysit, and I wasn't simply going to take the lesson plans that were left for the substitute. I was going to extemporize on those and expand on. If the subject was one that I was familiar with, I was going to teach it. I wasn't simply going to convey what I was given to convey. One of the hallmarks of the student body at Columbia, and one of the things I find most fascinating about this high school, is its diversity and its apparent lack of conflict. I'm not saying that all the kids get along perfectly all the time, but there's no sense, and I've never felt a sense in this school, of us against them in any aspect of the student body. I see a lot of kids getting along extraordinarily well together as classmates and as friends. And the dynamic that's involved here fascinates me. And as a psychologist, I'll give you that label because you've earned it. How do you feel about that?
I feel, well, I have the privilege teaching an elective, teaching psych. As I'd mentioned earlier, it's a 3-4 class, so it's essentially students in the beginning of the term get to choose their level, and it's basically the same. It's the same curriculum, but certain requirements are different. So it's great to see. Not necessarily. It's great to see just for one, diversity in having it as a mixed level class, so kids from that might typically take different levels. So that's really a great. It's given me kind of a unique perspective in a level school, being able to teach a heterogeneously leveled class. But I feel that it's a great thing, and it's something that I think in this community you can easily take it for granted, because diversity is something that we have, but looking at our state and the state of New Jersey, we are very diverse, but we're also very separated. You have communities that are predominantly Italian or predominantly Latino, et cetera. So I think it's it's a great thing, and it makes our community stand out, and it's something that we need to not take for granted and really need to appreciate.
In this economic downturn, libraries across New Jersey are reporting jumps in attendance of as much as 50% over the past year. Nearly 200,000 people use our computers every week.
Who'd have guessed that I'd be job hunting at my age? After spending several hours at home trying to upload my resume, I was just overwhelmed. My library showed me how to do it. Now I'm gaining back my confidence.
New Jersey libraries are transforming lives. Tell us your story.
One of the things that has struck me pretty much from the beginning of my experience here is the level of participation at this school. Cultural participation, musical participation, athletic participation. There really is something for everyone. The number of clubs that exist, the number of activities that exist before, during, and after school, and how the children seem to find avenues for their interests, regardless what their interests are. How does that fit into your psych classes?
Well, the thing about psych, and one of the many great things about it, is that it's all about them. It's all about the kids. It's all about people. It's all about human behavior and thought. So it lends itself to a variety of different things, different ages. We start talking about early on in the course we do the lifespan. So we start with infancy, go through childhood, adolescence, adulthood, old age. And talk about the variety there. We talk about various behaviors that we have, different parts of behavior, perception, sensation, how we learn, etc. So that kind of it really lends itself to diversity of interest, mm-hmm. in that there's something there's so many different interest levels that so many different personality types that can be really activated by the material. And I also, just as a teacher, one of the things, speaking of student teaching, one of the things that we learn in college is to really use variety, differentiated instruction, as they call it. So I try to do that. I'm very conscious of doing some appealing to auditory learners, visual learners, readings, discussions, lectures, video clips. So I try to really vary it to kind of meet the students' interests, because no two students in the school are alike. So
or
like
in the world.
In the world, exactly.
Right. Recently, you became the I don't know, counselor, maybe the sponsor of a student body club here at Columbia on diversity in the community. How's that coming?
It's been great. It was in I think it was late November. I was approached by two students. One of them was my current student, and another one I kind of knew informally, in the halls, who's now my student, but at the time wasn't. And they told me it was in response to an incident that occurred.
We don't need to go into details.
Okay. Well, it was they had asked me if I wanted to get involved with this, and just kind of create a club to embrace our diversity and celebrate our diversity and educate and talk about issues with it, good and bad, present and historical. And the thing that makes the club unique is that a lot of the times when people hear diversity, it's kind of a buzzword for, we think of it as racial diversity. But the club kind of looks at, all forms: race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, etc. So we try to really work with that, and it's going well so far. The kids have come up with, they've organized movie showings with different documentaries to try to get people in the community involved.
Don't we call that social psychology?
Yeah, it's a bit of
pretty much social
psych, exactly. And they're planning. I've actually reached out to. I've been talking with Dr. Lilly and the administrators, and we've reached out to a program known as, I believe it's Diversity Conference. It's based in New Brunswick, and they do in-school assemblies. So we're trying to see if we can organize, possibly this year, some type of show for the student body that deals with various social issues and brings together that diverse, true diversity, and just talking about issues faced with it and empowerment.
One of the things that I've been doing some of this spring is teaching in middle school here in Maplewood and in another district. It strikes me that the identification of children with learning disabilities and other issues that affect their ability to function effectively in classroom are not always well identified. Do you have any feelings about that?
I think that's very much a true statement. Sometimes things do, certain learning obstacles that kids have might go unidentified. And I think it's just kind of our jobs as teachers, we're like on the forefront, as you can relate, to kind of do our part in saying, hey, wait a second, this kid appears to need extra time off in. Let's see if maybe we can reach out to guidance. Or I've had this happen on a couple of occasions where a kid, I'll notice they're writing, they'll have like a P backwards or something like that. And it's like
perception issue.
Perception issue, possibly dyslexia, or kids that might, appear any of those things, hyperactive or just any kind of issue, even beyond learning disabilities. But I think it's our, job to kind of just be vigilant, I guess. And
well, one of the things that has occurred to me, because I didn't grow up in a school system that had ostensive or bold labeled excuse me, leveling issues. There were aptitude and career choice divisions in the schools that I went to. There was an academic group, there was a business group, there was a vocational group, and there were kids who really didn't know what they were going to do, and they were in a general class.
Okay.
And each of the diplomas was slightly different. If you intended to go on to higher education, then you were in the academic group, and that's the kind of diploma that you received. There were kids who could cross categories. Some of the kids who really had no hope of going to college because their parents couldn't afford it and their grades weren't good enough to get scholarships would choose business and be capable, by the time they got their diplomas at 17 or 18, of walking into an office and knowing how to type, how to file, how to take shorthand, how to do routine office tasks that a beginning student would have. It seems to me that in our zeal to promote higher education, we've overlooked vocational education in the public schools. How do you feel about that?
I guess I kind of have mixed feelings on it. It's one of those things where, we live in this highly competitive world, and it's like we want to really, prepare our kids for this ultimate, highest goal possible, college education, getting their degree. But the reality is that different people have different intelligences, different abilities. As Howard Gardner would say, the 8 intelligences that we have, not all of them are going to necessarily facilitate, the same thing. So I'm kind of mixed. I have mixed feelings on that. I think to an extent, we should be preparing kids for the academic track, but I think to have at least the option, a little more availability of those vocational type skills, I think that wouldn't hurt.
Well, we have the structure set up. There are vocational trade schools in most of the major counties of New Jersey. Almost every county has a VOTEC education program.
Okay.
We have one in Essex County. There's a very good one in Union County. And in fact, some of our kids from Columbia do VOTEC classes at different schools in the area. We've diminished, I think, the value of the trades. We have problems in America. We don't have enough die cutters. You know what a die cutter does? It makes devices that form other objects in a metalworking plant. This is not something that a computer can do. A computer can design it, but somebody has to run the machine that cuts the dies. That's true for plastics, it's true for metalworking, it's true for woodworking. Nobody's doing that. There's old guys now in their 40s and 50s and sometimes 60s running these machines and looking over their shoulder and seeing nobody who's going to come and take over for them. I see the possibility for alternative forms of vocational education. The VOTEC schools teach standard subjects. They teach English, they teach history, they teach, excuse me, math, and all of the grounding subjects, as well as training kids who want to follow those paths for a career in which they can earn a living. I don't see that as a negative. You've chosen to pursue a master's program in social work.
Yes.
At the Rutgers main campus. How'd you come to make that choice of a major?
I was, it started about 2 years ago. It was toward the end of my second year of teaching, and I knew that I needed to go back and start working on my master's. I had paid off my college undergrad loans, so I was debating of
Well
what
done.
to do. Thanks, thank you. I was debating what I should do, and I was thinking of a master's in psych. That was the first thing that I thought of. And I had heard that, master's in psych is great, but there aren't that many things, there aren't that many options with it, unless you go for the PhD, which I wasn't at that point sure if
Well,
that's
then you're
exactly.
also guiding yourself into the path as a counselor or as an advisor or
Yeah.
some other form,
Yeah.
rather than as a teacher, and I think you're hooked.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think I agree. I think, I really enjoy it. It's a great profession, a lot of fun, and very rewarding. But, so I was thinking master's in psych, but that kind of, as you said, it's very, directs you right into that. And then I was thinking of a master's, I was thinking possibly education, but at this point I was non-tenured. We heard of budget cuts, there was all this fear of education in New Jersey not being a really reliable career path. So I was thinking, you know what, I need something that's gonna give me options should I need them, something that I'm going to enjoy, something that's gonna connect to psych. So I chose social work, and I've had friends that have gone through it, and it's just sort of, it's a mix of a lot of things that I like. It's a mix of psych, it's a mix of a little bit of sociology, social psych, and there's just so much that you can do with it. And I think as teachers, we play a role of social worker to an extent. We're reaching out to families. We have kids that confide in us. We're advocating for students. We're helping students with those issues. So I just feel like it's something that I've had practice with teaching. And it's something that also there are a lot of opportunities part-time. I could, continue teaching and have the option to do social work part-time. So it's it just seems like a good thing to, a good master's, a very, give me a diverse field of choices, and options.
I think you're following a very good course here. All teachers are social workers, whether they admit it, whether they want to be, or whether they don't. It's part of the game. And I don't mean to make light of the use of the word game. Teaching is a competition. It's a competition for the knowledge of the kids. We want them to do well. All right.
Okay. Well,
Thanks a lot for visiting, neighbors and friends. We are available on YouTube with the cut-in Neighbors and Friends. I think you can find that. In the meantime, think about education. That's what we're doing. And I hope you come and visit us the next time we come around. Thank you, and bye-bye.